Hey, what's up everyone? John at the Geek here. Today I'm going to be installing this aftermarket CPU cooler. It is the Hyper 212 EVO from BladeMaster, and it's a universal fit. Fits everything from the older socket 775 sockets to the LGA 2011 sockets for Intel, and then for the AMD all the way back from AM2 sockets to the AM3 Plus sockets, as well as the FM1 Llano APU sockets. It works for that too. And so I like this this brand, this particular line. I've used the Hyper 212 Plus in the past, and it's very good CPU cooler. But what I like about it the most is that it's budget friendly. So this particular one was about 35 bucks, and the Hyper 212 Plus model, the generation before this, was I found online for about 22 to $23, which is very inexpensive, and it's great for replacing the stock cooler if you want to get into either lower noise or overclocking your CPU. This is a great choice, and the reason why I went with this and making a video on this particular model is that I think it's going to be a pretty popular model. Many CPU coolers, aftermarket CPU coolers, there's a lot of good ones out there. But this is the one that I found to be kind of the easiest to install because of the retention bracket that they use, and I'll explain what that is later on in the video. But I also want to talk about like the placement of the fan and the direction of airflow in your system and in your case. So I'll talk a little bit about you know, what's kind of optimal, and every case is different. So hopefully I could show you for the most part how you should set up and share with you some of the experiences that I've had with many different cases in this particular line of CPU coolers. So first things first, I'm just going to go ahead and go through and talk a little bit about terminology that you often hear with cooling and airflow and fans, and that is the push-pull method. But I'm going to need to open this up and show you so I can better illustrate for you what the whole push-pull method or terminology is all about. Alright, so here is everything you get. It's very simple, basic, not a whole lot to it. It already comes with one fan assembly installed on the heatsink here, and then you have the bracket, the backplate, that goes on the back of the motherboard here, and then you have the hardware, the retention bracket, as well as an extra bracket to add on an additional fan, to have two fans on here. So this bracket right here that mounts to a fan, you get an extra one right here with the CPU cooler, and then a little bit of thermal grease. It's very good thermal grease that they have there, so I recommend it, unless you want to go fancy and expensive with I don't know, some like Arctic silver or anything like that. And then basically all of the installation hardware needed for various sockets from both Intel and AMD. They also have one included here specifically for the Intel socket 2011 LGA. I'm not using that today. I'm using a good old socket 775, very old socket. So basically I'll talk a little bit about the airflow now. A lot of these fans or basically nowadays have an arrow on them indicating which way the air flows or which way the air blows, although they still follow a certain standard. Let me see if I could find that stupid arrow. It's on the bottom here. So right on the bottom here, as you can see right there, so there's these two little arrows there, see it? And so this arrow that's pointing down, that is indicating that the airflow goes from here, starts from here and blows through this way and comes out down this way towards the heatsink here, right? And then that other arrow right there indicates that the fan blade is spinning this way, right? So it spins this way, and that for when it spins that way, the airflow is pushing air through here and out through the back here, and through the heatsink, right? And so as another example I'll give you is this one here. This has the arrows as well. So basically this arrow right there means that air is going from here out this way, right? And that the fan blade spins this way, right? Back in the old days, before they had these, basically this fan assembly right here, see how it has the motor here and this little guard and bracket that holds the whole fan assembly inside. That basically meant that the air went out that way. So wherever you saw this part right here, and it's still the same case for most modern fans today, the airflow still flows out this way. So it goes from here, the open fan blades here, right? It goes in that way and then it comes out this way. So you can always tell by just having this fan assembly, and sometimes the sticker or whatnot is how you can tell the direction of the airflow, right? So that's a little bit about airflow and how to tell what direction the fan will be blowing the air. Alright, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the terminology that you might often hear with fans, and it's called the push-pull configuration. And so basically it's just configuring your fan's airflow direction, and essentially what that means is that so I'll use this as an example. Right now this is configured in a push method, right? Or push configuration, meaning that airflow is coming in this way and it's pushing air through the heatsink, right? And so when air is going from the outside here and moving across and going through, it's being pushed through the heatsink, right? To get to cool off the heatsink. So that is the push configuration, right? So if I were to actually flip this around and bring this over here, oh, it's still, let's see here. Okay, yeah. If I were to set this up this way, right? And now airflow, this airflow is going this way. So now it is pulling air from the outside here, and it's pulling it in to cool the heatsink, and then blowing it out this way, right? So instead of air being pushed through it, actually air is being sucked in because air is going this way. So the fan is then sucking air, cool air from the outside here, wherever it may be, and then pulling it through the heatsink. So it's pulling it in, attracting the cool air in to cool off the heatsink, pulling it in, and then exhausting it out. So when they say both a push-pull method, that means it's actually using both. One fan is going to be pushing air, right? So air, cool air is here. It's taking in cool air, it's pushing air through, and then the other fan is pulling air through. So it's the push and then pull method or configuration, right? So that's basically what it means. I mean, you could also do a, if you were to flip this fan around, it would be a push-push, so or a pull-pull, which kind of defeats the purpose. I don't really understand why anybody would want to do that necessarily. Maybe in certain configurations or certain fans and heat sinks, maybe that would work better, but I haven't really come across anybody doing that. Yeah, so that's basically the push-pull configuration terminology, and it applies not only to just heat sinks and over-the-air heat sinks or air heat sinks, but water cooling as well as, and also inside your computer case. And again, I'll show that once I configure everything together and install all of this. So yeah, that's just a little bit about push-pull. All right, so to better get an understanding of how to set this all up and configure and placement of your new cooler, I have to first remove the old one. So I'll go ahead and just 4 simple quarter turns of the bracket here, and pull straight up, out, and there we have the old fan out. And I'm not actually going to install this quite yet, obviously. I have to clean the thermal paste off of there, but essentially I want to talk a little bit about placement of this. So again, I have the push-pull method here, and so basically airflow is going this way through the heatsink and out this way, right? That's how I have it set up right now. So what I want to do, since I have it like that, is either set it up this way, right, and place it down so that it takes cool air from the front here, because typically this fan right here in the front is blowing air in or bringing air in, because the front is usually a cooler air, and so it's bringing it in, and so cool air should be around here. And then you'll also have this exhaust fan here. You might have this exhaust fan, you might not, but if you do, it's great. And this exhaust fan is configured to be exhausting air, so it's pushing air out, right? So you want cool air here up in the front, and then attracting and pulling it in, and pushing it through the heatsink, and then this fan is pulling air through the heatsink, and then it exhausts out this way, right? So that's one particular configuration. But if you notice right here, right down in the corner here, the memory chips are there, and in my case I'm lucky because I'm just using some cheap value RAM and there's no heat sinks around the RAM, so it doesn't come up as much. But if you have newer systems like socket, anything after socket 775 basically, your RAM chips are going to come up here and it's going to hit this fan, right? And if you don't have this fan, great, easy. So you just do the good old pull method, and it pull air and exhaust it out this way, which is great if you're just going to use one fan. But if you got 2 fans here, this is going to become a problem with your memory chips here. So you'll have to basically make the decision if you really want it in this configuration. Now the case that I happen to have also has 2 slots here for 120 millimeter fans to either bring cool air into the case or exhaust hot air out of the case. I typically have it set up to do exhaust, to blow air out. So another option is to actually turn this, if for example for whatever reason you want air to go this way and out through the top here, and if you have another fan there that you can install, hopefully it all fits in together nicely, but that is one other option there. I've had instances where the RAM chip was too high, so I only used one fan, so this fan went away, and so it left me enough room to be able to drop the CPU cooler in this way to exhaust air out of the case, right? So you'll just basically, you have those 2 layouts there, and however you want to set it, adjust your fans accordingly. And typically the way I have it is I usually try to exhaust it out through the back here, or through the front, or through the top. So that's pretty much the configuration of how I want to do it. So for this particular case, I'm going to have it set this way, to have the push-pull method, and also exhausting air through the back here, because I'm not going to have a fan on the top of the case. So just this method is just fine. So now I'm going to install the backplate and the screw in the backplate to the motherboard. Alright, so here is the back of the motherboard, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of just line this up to see which holes I'll be using. And it looks like for this particular socket I will be using the innermost hole there all the way around, so everything lines up real good. And so they have different slots here for the different sockets, so there's 3 different ones here that they have. And what I'll basically be doing, I want to try to show you, is I'll be screwing this in from the other side of the motherboard, and basically it's going to meet this in the back here. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see that, hopefully you can, let me try to focus in on it as much as I can. If you notice that one of these sides here is actually flat, right? So that side there is flat, not round all the way. And on the bracket here, same thing. One side, this side right here, is flat. And so basically it's supposed to allow you to insert this in easily through here, and then it's not supposed to let it spin around, because after you screw this in and you've got the bolt here, you screw this in. So imagine there's a motherboard in between here. After you screw it in tight, basically the retention bracket that the CPU cooler that this holds down, once you screw it in here, basically you'll be able to screw it down tight and it won't spin. So as you're screwing down the retention bracket, if this whole thing were to start spinning, then you'll just keep spinning or screwing down trying to screw down the bracket, and you won't get a good tight tension, right? So that's why they have that slotted that way. And so that's just to give you a sort of an idea. Alright, so now I've got the bracket in place. All the holes are lined up. I'm going to go ahead and insert the first screw here, and you may need a person to help you hold this back plate into place, but essentially I'll just push this through here, and then here's where you might need somebody to hold that plate there, but you'll essentially just screw in this, and they have conveniently supplied a little socket, right? And you don't have to tighten it all the way just yet. So now you can tighten this down with the screwdriver. Alright, so now I'm going to be removing the thermal paste with some 91% alcohol here, and I'll also be using this cleansing pad here that I got lying around. You can also use a coffee filter if you want, or one of these microfiber cloths to remove the thermal paste. Just make sure it's a new one that doesn't have any, cleansing substances or cleansing agents or any oil or dirt on the towel itself already, because you don't want to contaminate your heatsink there. So I'm going to go ahead and soak this with the rubbing alcohol. Alright, so now that I got this soaked, I'm just going to go ahead and remove. Kind of break it up a little. Alright, so while the CPU is drying, what you can do now is prepare the heatsink surface. And so you got to peel off this piece of tape right here. Right, so now I'm going to go ahead and also rub this down with some rubbing alcohol just to give it a nice wipe. Make sure that it's nice and clean, free of debris, right? So just go ahead and let that dry for a few minutes, and then we can apply the thermal paste. Alright, so now I have the thermal paste here ready to be applied, and I'm just going to go ahead and open this up. And all you really need is to just apply a small pellet, BB size, about that much. Alright, so now for the tricky part, you got to get this this guy here to line up correctly with that little nub there, and those little notches right here, that right there, see those right there? So they got to line up properly. And so what you'll do is you'll slide this in here like so, right? And then you got to open this, spread this open, and it's basically going to look like that. Alright, so now we're going to be setting down the CPU cooler onto the CPU with the thermal paste, and we're going to want to line up those screws there and tighten those screws down. Alright, so now that you've got the screws lined up and you kind of hand tighten them a little bit just to get them started, you can now screw them down with the screwdriver and tighten them up, and then we'll apply the fans. Now you can reattach the fans. Remember the direction of the airflow that you want to use. Just go ahead and reattach each fan now. Alright, so now you want to plug in the power cables, so look for one that's close by for this power cable for the fan here. So there's one conveniently located for me right here. So go ahead and plug, that's one of them. And now the other one. Alright, so this particular connector has 4 pins on it, 4 wires, and if you can find on your motherboard, typically it's a CPU fan header that has 4 of them. This basically allows it to do stuff like fan control and control the speed of the fan based on temperature of the CPU, which is cool to have, and that's something you set in the BIOS. So try to use one of those for at least one of the fans, a fan that has 4 pins connector on it. Alright, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Aftermarket CPU cooling. The BladeMaster Hyper 212 EVO installed with the push-pull configuration. Thanks for watching. Please comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, subscribe, and all that jazz. Thanks for watching. I'll catch